What a nice February day in Northern Virginia. We're sitting at like 70-degree weather. Great weather. I digress. Working on the Scat Pack HEMI. First thing we gotta do is figure out what the engine cradle and transmission cradle are gonna look like. On the ground over there, I'll show you shortly, is a V8 Roadster engine cradle. And with that being said, that's kind of the top of the line V8 parts you can get from Miatas, in my opinion. So we're gonna replace the whole subsection up here with that V8 Roadster engine cradle, rehook the steering up to that, A-arms, etc. Actually, we're probably gonna take the A-arms off and powder coat them because why not? Again, I'm digressing here. So we're gonna replace this stock engine cradle. We might keep this BMW engine cradle or transmission cradle as well. It's kind of TBD how the Scat Pack is gonna fit. So here's what we're working with. We've got stock engine stuff under the hood, V8 Roadster stiffeners throughout, working on a great start to this project. Yada, 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 yeah. So no matter what, this engine cradle is gonna have to come out. And I don't wanna put this in until it's powder coated. So gonna get some Kawasaki green powder coat this in the Light Armor's oven. Make sure that's nice and pretty. And I showed you before, but we're doing light green, Kawasaki green, because we have these amazing heated and cooled PRP seats. Black alligator, Kawasaki green, purple suede, should look pimpin'. So, pimpin'. So I digress. Let's get this thing sprayed in the oven, cooking, cooled down, and then we'll start disassembling everything. Should be a good day. Okay, so this is how everything's strung up. This is how I like to spray powder. Obviously, I have the big 5-foot standing oven, so I can fit these larger parts in here. But when I hang parts, I use a little bit of chicken wire to act as a spring to stop the part from swinging back and forth, pushing the dolly back in. Obviously, if you have a smaller oven, you're not even gonna have that issue. You'll probably hand carry it in. So I digress. It's all hung. Gonna spray the Kawasaki green powder from Columbia Coatings onto this subframe, and once it cooks, we're gonna go ahead and get that test fit it in the Miata and put the engine in for the first time. First of many. So looking good, gonna get this sprayed. Boom, just like that. Let the dust settle. You can kind of see how thick of a coat I put on there. A little bit of a blemish there, might have been some oil carryover. Maybe it'll get burned out. If not, it'll look great. It's on the underside anyway, so who cares? That being said, here's how we're looking. About a cooker in the oven, I think 400 for 10, so should be a nice quick cook. This upgraded Light Armor does do real well getting up to temperature and holding temp, so should be easy. Gonna throw it in. Wow. Sparkly, pretty Kawasaki green subframe. I'm stoked with how this looks. I'm gonna go ahead and let this cool off and take it out, get it prepped, move over to the good old Miata and get the original subframe taken out as well, and swap all those nice new parts back in. Make sure the subframe's in place, bolted up to where it needs to go, and then it's gonna be testing the engine. So relatively easy procedure. I'm gonna go get some parts unbolted. So with that being said, we do have a couple bolts to take out. The transmission crossmember used to be right here with 2 bolts. The regular crossmember was right here. Sport crossmember was here with 4 bolts. And then there were 2 nuts in the rear for the transmission crossmember as well. So before we take the front, steering suspension assembly out, we have to take out 2 more bolts or 2 more nuts on top of the actual suspension assembly itself. And then obviously the shock tower bolts need to come out. That way the entire assembly can just drop all the way out, and I just have the chassis of the car up in the air. Once I get that up in the air, I'm gonna swing the engine for the first time. Once the engine is swung in, I'll use the actual V8 Roadster subframe and put it in place to make sure all the clearance and everything's gonna work. I'm not 100% tied to this suspension. It would be nice to reuse the Miata suspension because I do have 11.25 Willwood big brakes for the stock Miata suspension, and all the components bolt exactly up to the V8 Roadster. So it would be nice. I'm not tied to it though. I could go Mustang 2 or something even a little newer, just so that I can have all that aftermarket support. Again, not tied to it. We'll see what happens. First things first, let's get this assembly dropped. Let's get the engine swung in place, car lifted up a little bit, and test fit where that V8 Roadster mount's gonna be in place. All right, so laying on the ground. Of course, this will be a terrible video, but as you can see, we've got everything broken free and loose. That steering double D is unbolted. That should slide out. So everything's ready to fall. I'm gonna go ahead and drag it back up, and whole front suspension, drive assembly, steering assembly will be out of the Miata, and we can start working on the engine, the fun stuff. So sounds good. Let's get this thing lifted. All right, so it appears I'm gonna need to make some notches in the upper body skins that kind of go to where the frame rails lead to, because it turns out the stock headers exhaust on a Scat Pack don't want to fit in a Miata. So I guess I'll be doing that. I could take the exhaust off and bolt it in place, which is another option, but yeah, I don't know. So pull it back out, figure out what the next steps are, and I told you I'd pull it out 1,000 times, so let's pull it back out, get the frame notched, maybe the exhaust pulled off, and see if we can get it to fit. Okay, so naturally we did a little bit of damage to the sheet metal there, trying just to plasma cut that out. Took the catalytic converter off that side as well. I was about to take it off this side. And then I realized even once it's in there, it's gonna be sitting way too high and it's not gonna fit unless I really notch the frame right there. So here I am at a stopping point. I'm either going to notch the frame on the engine bay right here and add some tubes to strengthen everything up so I have a little bit of crumple zone still intact, or what I think I'm gonna do is put the engine on the ground, use the lift the car up, put the car on top of the engine, redo the engine hoist, then pick the engine off the ground once it's already in there, and then I can kind of set engine height from there. So I think I'm gonna give that a try. You know, it's worth just trying. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and then we will move forward, notching the front of the engine bay for the V8 if I can't get it to fit. So fitment issues, you put in a Scat Pack in a Miata, you know, it's gonna happen. Okay, so tough decision to make. Here's where we're at on the Scat Pack. So yeah, you could chop the wheel wells and shove it back a little bit and maybe have room for a radiator up front, maybe. But the bigger thing is the width here. So this is just the top of the engine, right? This is the plastics and the dressing. We're not even talking about clearing the exhaust, clearing any of the front accessories, the alternator, or if we go down to the other side, clearing the other exhaust, power steering, any of the cooling lines, anything. Yeah, so tight fit, go figure. The Scat Pack doesn't want to fit in the MB Miata. So I think I'm gonna pull it out again for the third time. And once it's pulled out, I think I'm gonna make the hard decision to go tube front end on this Miata build and really save a lot of that frame width. And by front frame chop and front, tubular subsection, I do mean chopping it, kind of exactly at the firewall, and then running tube that will support the frame and the substructure as well as the engine, and then I'll mount the skins to that tube instead of mounting them on all the original sheet metal and frame. So I think it's the route we're gonna have to take. I don't know if there's a better way to do this. I can't think of one right now, so I'm gonna go drink a beer and make a decision if we're gonna chop the firewall or not.